Town Hall. This event is themed to focus on Social Security and healthcare, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. My name is John. I'll be your moderator for this evening's telephone town hall. Congressman Deluzio is a veteran, a voting rights attorney, a cybersecurity expert, union organizer, and he proudly represents Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District and all of you. We'll get started in just a few minutes, but this live interactive event is all about giving you, Congressman Deluzio's constituents, the chance to ask questions about the issues you care about. This conversation is specifically focused on Social Security and healthcare, and the majority of the Q&A will be dedicated to these topics. Please focus your questions on these topics. Questions on other topics will be taken if time allows. To submit your question anytime during the event through the phone, please press *3. Again, if you'd like to submit a question during this event, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Participants streaming the event online can type their question below the streaming player. We won't be able to get to all of your questions, but we will get to as many as we can. After pressing *3, you will relay your question to a staff member, and they'll record your name, your hometown, and your question to put into the queue for the congressman. Again, submit your questions by pressing *3 to speak with a staff member and leave your question for Congressman Deluzio. I'd like to take a minute real quick to welcome anyone who's just joined us. You're here at the very start of Congressman Chris Deluzio's Social Security and Healthcare Telephone Town Hall. We'll get started soon. Along with asking your questions, you can subscribe to Representative Deluzio's e-newsletter by pressing *6. Again, to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, you can press *6 to leave your email and get subscribed. We're very glad you're joining Congressman Deluzio's telephone town hall. For those just joining, if you want to ask a question about Social Security or health care, which will be the main goal of this event, please press *3 to submit your question. That's *3 to ask a question. Now, before we get to our first question, Congressman Deluzio has a poll question to better understand who's joining us tonight. Please use your telephone keypad to answer the following poll. Do you, or does anyone in your household, count on and use Social Security to cover your costs? If the answer is yes, press 1. If the answer is no, press 2. Let me just run that by one more time. Do you, or does anyone in your household, count on and use Social Security to cover your costs? Press 1 for yes, and press 2 for no. Thank you all for participating in this poll on Congressman Deluzio's telephone town hall. I'll show the results of the poll after we take some questions, so please keep submitting yours to the Q&A by pressing *3. Participants streaming the event online at deluzio.house.gov/live can type their question below the streaming player. While it's not possible to get to everyone's question, we will get to as many as possible, so stay on the line to hear if your question is answered. If you don't have a question, but you just want to listen in, you can listen to the audio stream of this event on Congressman Deluzio's Facebook page or at deluzio.house.gov/live. Again, that's deluzio.house.gov/live. But if you would like to ask a question of your congressman, you can do that by clicking *3. We're going to give just a couple more minutes for people to join the call with Congressman Deluzio. So now, I'd like to invite the congressman to give some opening remarks before we get to answering your questions. Congressman, you have the floor.
Thank you, and hello everybody, and welcome to my telephone town hall. I'm down in Washington for votes this week, so thanks for dialing in since I can't be there at home with you tonight. And I know there's some pretty tough, dangerous weather out there, so please be safe. Looks like, let's see, more than 11,000 folks are on the call. That's awesome. Thanks for spending it with me. And again, thank you for joining me. Thanks to everyone who tried or wanted to join a few weeks ago. You may recall my team had to postpone it due to the congressional leadership change in the vote schedule last minute, but I'm glad we're back now to talk. I just want to introduce myself for those who don't know me. I grew up in Thornburg here in our district in Allegheny County. I was a senior in high school when the 9/11 attacks happened. I was a Canavan. I went off to the Naval Academy for school from there, and ultimately I was an officer. I did a few deployments, a couple at sea and one on the ground in Iraq. And now I'm a proud husband and dad. I got 4 kids who we wrangle. And my work after the military, I became a lawyer. I was working at Pitt, cybersecurity and voting issues. Was proud to have organized alongside the steelworkers. And since I was elected in 2022, it's been my great honor to have this job, to serve and represent all of us from Western Pennsylvania in the United States Congress. So with that, we'll dive into tonight's main topics, Social Security and health care, big issues, I know, for a lot of folks, including me. I will tell you, where I go all across our district, I hear from folks who are worried about this administration's and DOJ's attacks on our Social Security and health care. My office has been getting a ton of calls, I'm talking hundreds, on these issues, and it's no surprise to me why. These are hard-earned benefits. Maybe you're tuning in tonight because you're one of the just about 180,000 people in my congressional district, our district, who rely on some of the $350 million in monthly Social Security benefits that you have earned. Or maybe, you're like me, decades away from retirement. You've got kids maybe. You want to make sure that we'll be able to count on Social Security for our retirement or our kids. I want to be clear. Social Security is a bedrock national promise from one generation to the next. It's a promise that seniors have earned the right to retire with dignity after a lifetime of hard work. I'm a guy who takes promises seriously. All elected leaders ought to be. It's a core value for me and so many of us in Western PA that if you work hard and play by the rules, you got to be able to live with dignity, get your slice of the American dream. I think the American dream has been under attack. It's under attack now. That is unacceptable to me. It's worth reminding everyone here what specifically has been going on in Washington. Elon Musk called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. DOJ has already fired thousands of Social Security workers and has threatened to shutter and close field offices. What's that mean? What's the impact? It's going to jack up travel and wait times, make it harder to get your earned benefits, put at risk those benefits. And they were planning to close down telephone customer service lines for identity verification, which would have left folks who don't use computers or smartphones out in the cold. But the Social Security Administration, since they've backed off those plans because of pushback from guys like me in Congress and folks like you and the public. That's a little bit of good news in what otherwise is a pretty bleak and, I'll be honest, trying time right now. Social Security Administration, they're also ending all payments by paper check. That means that's taken away the freedom for folks to decide how they want to receive their earned benefits. They've accessed sensitive data systems of the Social Security Administration, risking your personal information getting exposed to crooks and hackers and other criminals. And on health care that kids and families might get through Medicaid, the budget proposal that's being debated in Washington that's been put forward by my Republican colleagues, it targets Medicaid with massive cuts, $880 billion for that part of the government. And health care for my fellow veterans is also being attacked. We've seen about 2,400 VA workers fired and 80,000 or so plan to be fired. There's just no way that this won't hurt the care that we veterans have earned. Many veterans have earned at great cost. I've already heard about how this could hurt mental health care in particular. Mental health providers being crammed together for in-person sessions that are in a space where they don't have privacy to protect their patients. They can't do their jobs well enough to give the care they need to give to veterans. And on Medicare, I'll be honest with you there too. I've got lots of Republican colleagues who are dead set on repealing a law called the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, you know what that law did? It's got caps on out-of-pocket prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year. That means it'll save Pennsylvania seniors with Medicare an average of around $2,500 this year on prescription costs. That'd be a huge hit if that was taken away. That law, the Inflation Reduction Act, it also allows Medicare to negotiate drug prices. That's about keeping drug prices down, but it's also about cutting the deficit. That's a big and important fiscal responsibility tool. We've also seen the administration attack some of the programs that help us build healthier communities, build out long-term health. We've seen 10,000 or so health and human services workers fired, including hundreds here in Western PA who work on mine safety and respirator certification and work that we might use on things like firefighting and painting. And then we've seen the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, under attack. In our region, right, that funds north of $650 million of life-saving research and so much else in Western Pennsylvania alone. Diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's. That could set back really important, groundbreaking cures and treatments and could really wreck our region's economy, our Western Pennsylvania economy. And all that's just in the last 3 months. Question is why? Why are they attacking earned benefits, our health, dignity? Let's be crystal clear on this. It's so these folks can pillage our government to pay for fiscally reckless giveaways to the most powerful and richest people and corporations in the history of the planet. It would balloon our deficit and saddle us with trillions of dollars in debt. That is the budget framework they're pushing. That's why I've been standing my ground and telling DOJ and this administration, my Republican counterparts who control Congress, to keep their hands off hard-earned benefits. That's why I'm using every tool I've got to fight back for us. I've been speaking out in the press, at rallies, on social media, about how the budget to slash Medicaid would hurt our people. I've been on the House floor to sound the alarm. I fired off letters to the Social Security Administration with lots of my colleagues to speak in a powerful voice. I'm co-sponsoring legislation like the Keeping Our Field Offices Open Act to prevent office closures that could hurt benefits, bills like Protecting American Social Security Data Act to stop partisan and political folks like DOJ from accessing these sensitive data systems. And we're working on legislation to keep the option for folks in Social Security to pick paper checks if they want. That's also why I'm here tonight, right? I want to hear from all of you what's on your mind and tell you what I think is happening and answer your questions around Social Security and health care. And again, I want to be clear, so many of these attacks have been waged under this banner of government efficiency. And trust me, I'm all for making our government more efficient and work better for people, rooting out waste and fraud and all the rest. I think that's key to delivering better government services. But plundering our government, spreading bogus and lousy information, gutting public services for hardworking people just to benefit robber barons and the richest and most powerful who have huge conflicts of interest, that's not how we restore the American dream. That's corruption, plain and simple. People with huge resources using that to get control of our government, to line their pockets and benefit themselves instead of the common good. I think it's corruption. I'm going to push back as hard as I can. I'll keep up the fight for our freedom, our safety, our health, our dignity. And that is my promise to you as our congressman. I take this job very seriously. I'm never going to shy from fighting back where I need to and standing up for what I think is my positive vision of what our government should be doing. And we got to be focused on lowering costs for people. We need to make more stuff in this country, rebuild our manufacturing base, have good, solid jobs that can sustain families. I think a big part of that is we got to grow the economic pie for everybody and make sure that people who work hard get a bigger piece of that pie. To do that, we also got to take on the corporate power that's ripping folks off. In short, let's rebuild the American dream so that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you can live a life with dignity. Well, I'm going to focus tonight on key parts of that, Social Security and health care. I hope and expect we'll have some time for some other questions as well. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody. I'll turn it back over to the moderator to go through logistics and how tonight will go, and we'll dig in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Congressman. We'll get started with the first question in this Social Security and Healthcare Town Hall in just a moment. But before we get into that, just a reminder to everyone that you can submit your questions by pressing *3 on your telephone keypad. Along with asking questions, you can also subscribe to Representative Deluzio's weekly email newsletter by pressing *6. We're glad you're joining Congressman Chris Deluzio's telephone town hall. And now, Congressman, let's get to our first question. This comes from Audrey in Penn Hills. Audrey asks, do I need to worry about my benefits being taken away?
Audrey, thanks for the question. I'm going to guess you're asking about Social Security here, and what I'll say is I sure hope not, but I think there are real risks here. And I want to be clear that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that the promise of Social Security is there for you and anyone else in this country who's earned it and for generations to come. And I talked a little bit about what I think are very real risks to Social Security that are coming from this administration and their allies in Congress. And again, I use this phrase a lot for a reason. Social Security is an earned benefit. People earn Social Security. You pay into it after or over a lifetime of hard work. It's not a Ponzi scheme, as Elon Musk has talked about it. It is a really important promise this country has that, again, people earn. And again, there are a lot of people in our district, 180,000 people who are Social Security recipients. That's a lot of people who've earned those benefits. And so what are those threats? And again, I don't say this to scare anyone. I say this to be honest about what I'm seeing happen in Congress and why I think it's unacceptable to put at risk Social Security benefits. We have seen efforts to cut phone services, to cut staffing, to close field offices of the Social Security Administration. All of those things, any of those things, could put at risk anyone's ability to get the benefits they've earned. We've seen reports of those getting access to your sensitive information within Social Security. That could put you at a danger of getting hacked, of crooks and criminals using that information to steal from you. I talked about at the beginning here too. The Trump administration has an order out to try to take away the freedom to choose if you want a paper check. Some people prefer it. Some people may be the only way they can reliably get their benefits. And I think that's a mistake to take away that freedom. Again, I think there's a risk some will lose out on something they've earned in Social Security. There have been reports of the Social Security website having problems and crashing. Claim staff, even as recent as within the last week or so, were having a hard time entering new disability claims. That forced staff to cancel some appointments. That meant some had to be blocked from receiving benefits, or that some blocked some already receiving benefits, then couldn't access their accounts. And again, I think all of those are real risks with real consequences to people. I don't think folks here need a lecture from me about what it is for someone in retirement to get that Social Security check, the difference that might make to being able to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. So again, I talked about what I'm trying to do to protect Social Security. I'm using every tool I've got at my disposal with my colleagues here. And certainly all of you and your voices matter. They certainly matter. From the legislation I'm trying to sponsor to sharing the stories from constituents, all of you, from rallying with people, talking to the press to share these stories, firing off letters. I'll tell you, one of the things that I've been trying to do is to get the Social Security Administration to answer questions from members of Congress, like me, on behalf of our constituents. They are ignoring us. This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. I don't care what anyone's political party is when they call my office for help. I think it's outrageous that we're seeing the administration not be responsive. Now remember, some of these efforts, we're seeing the administration lose in court. That is good to me. The public pressure and these efforts are working. In March, a federal judge blocked, for the time being, DOJ from Social Security systems that has that personal data on so many Americans. They called that work a fishing expedition. It also required the team there to delete any personally identifiable data that they might have. That's, number one, important to protect folks, but it tells you and highlights the risk. We also saw, and I was one of others, who wrote to the Social Security Administration saying that their plans to cut telephone services would hurt people, would have left behind some folks who don't use computers or smartphones. And we saw the Social Security Administration back off that plan. That's a win. This pressure can work. And look, that's all about right now what we're doing to protect and guard against these attacks, but I think we need to do more to shore up and protect Social Security. It should not be so hard for folks to access and understand and apply for these benefits. One of the things we did successfully do was pass the Social Security Fairness Act. This got rid of penalties for folks like teachers and cops and firefighters and others who might receive a pension that was then reducing the Social Security benefits they've earned. I was a proud original co-sponsor of that bill. I've been a co-sponsor in a bill that we're going to introduce again that would increase benefits in Social Security, but also put it on strong fiscal footing so that it is there through 2100. It does that by saying that it's pretty crazy that someone who makes $1 billion and someone who makes $180,000 pay the same in taxes towards Social Security. I think someone who's a billionaire ought to pay more than someone who makes $180,000 towards Social Security, and we can do that and shore up Social Security. I'm on a bunch of other bills that I think will do a lot to protect and shore up this benefit. We rallied in Beaver County at the courthouse a few weeks ago to say hands off these hard-earned benefits. That's an important message for folks to hear. And so I know there's a lot of work to be done. I want to be clear about the threats and what guys like me are doing alongside so many of you to make sure that these benefits remain for so many who have earned them.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's go to another question right now. Elizabeth from Crafton asks, what is the Congressman doing to protect veterans' health care?
Elizabeth, thank you. And look, I got to tell you, it's a little bit personal to me. I'm a veteran. I go to the VA for my health care. I'm very proud of the care the VA delivers for me and my fellow veterans. I got to tell you, you ask folks around our district, do you think our country should deliver the best care we can, the best benefits we can to veterans? The answer is yes. Again, Democrat, Republican, people around here think that's part of the sacred obligation we have to the young people we send off to serve. And I'm outraged that we continue to see attacks on the VA from this administration. I mentioned already around 2,400 or so folks fired, I think around in February. I've been in direct communication with the leadership of VA Pittsburgh to find out exactly how those firings are impacting them. And we know the VA is planning, because we've seen the memo, 80,000 additional cuts. That would have a horrendous impact on the VA's ability to deliver the care and the benefits it needs to deliver. And remember, about a third of VA workers are veterans themselves. A third. So there are a lot of veterans to be on the chopping block here. And these firings that we've seen already seem to have no connection to whether the person being fired is doing a good job, whether their role is really important to delivering care. Doesn't make sense to me. And remember, we're doing this, or we're seeing this happen, these firings, at a moment when more veterans, especially from my generation who may have served in Iraq like I did, or elsewhere in the Middle East, are finally coming in. And that's because of a law called the PACT Act. And it finally got a better path into VA healthcare for those exposed to toxic burn pits like many in my generation, or Agent Orange like the Vietnam generation, or other toxic substances. So this is a moment where we need more investment in the VA, and yet I'm seeing the Trump administration, my Republican counterparts, entertain these attacks and push these attacks. And it seems to me because they want to try to privatize the VA. And I know that if they do that, they're going to hurt the specialty care that the VA delivers for my fellow veterans. And the more rural parts of our district and our country, where there aren't a lot of health care options, those veterans are going to suffer the most. And so I'm going to continue being loud as I can, taking every action I can to protect veterans' care. And I will tell you, I get pretty mad when I see politicians, many of them draft dodgers and chicken hawks who sent us off to war over the last 20 years, who are now betraying the very young people then, who are now the veterans who need the care from the VA. I think it's outrageous. They ought to be ashamed of themselves.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you to everyone who has sent in their questions. If you'd like to submit a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Again, if you'd like to submit a question, press *3. Before we get to our next question, I'd quickly like to share the results of the first poll we asked. Many of you answered the question for us, and the question was, do you or anyone in your household count on and use Social Security to cover costs? 68% of you said yes, 32% said no. Again, 68% said yes, 32% said no. Thanks again for participating in that poll, and I'd like to ask another one. Here's the question. Do you or does someone in your household count on Medicare or Medicaid for your health care? If the answer is yes, please press 1. If the answer is no, press 2. Again, do you or does someone in your household count on Medicare or Medicaid for your health care? Press 1 for yes and press 2 for no. And now it's time to get back to your questions. We'll take as many as we can in this Social Security and Healthcare telephone town hall. Next up, we have Michael from Oakmont. Michael says, does the Congressman have thoughts on replacing IG, especially for HHS, to combat fraud and waste? I'm concerned about the DOGE cuts that do more harm than good.
Michael, thank you. And for those who don't know or maybe not know what the IG reference is there, that's the Inspector General. And these are watchdogs that are in many of the agencies that are charged with being independent to uncover problems in our federal departments. HHS, that Michael mentioned there, that's Health and Human Services. Think the Pentagon, the Defense Department, another department that has an Inspector General, and so many others. And there were firings. President Trump fired many of these Inspector Generals that I have a real problem with, because these are folks who are supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be non-political. They're supposed to root out problems no matter which party's in charge, no matter who is charging, no matter who is in power at the moment. And it is a real problem, I think, especially as we have seen so much corruption. I talked about the conflicts of interest we've seen from so many of these folks involved with DOGE up to Mr. Musk, that you've got contracts with the government, and yet you are getting access to sensitive systems. You are directing policy outcomes, personnel, hiring, you name it. I want independent watchdogs to be in there making sure no one's plundering our government. I'm very worried they are. I will tell you, I serve on the Armed Services Committee as one of my committees. I have a pretty serious oversight responsibility over the Pentagon, our military. Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, has been involved in an outrageous and reckless episode around using Signal, this non-secure, non-classified texting platform, around attack plans before the strikes on the Houthis. Has been sharing some of these same kind of attack plans and sensitive and classified information with his wife, apparently, and others. I've called for his firing. I've called for his removal. And we still cannot get any hearings on how this happened, whether they put at risk specific missions beyond those we know about, because this administration and their allies in Congress refuse to conduct proper oversight. And it, to me, highlights the problem of a lack of courage by the folks in charge in the Congress, the Republican allies of the president, and the absence of so many of these independent inspectors general. Both of these things together are real problems, and I worry that we aren't finding out and we don't know what's happening in these departments where we should have direct and aggressive oversight for the American people to protect money, to make sure no one's corruptly enriching themselves at the expense of the American people.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question is from George from Ambridge. George asks, my drugs are too expensive. What are you doing to bring down costs?
George, thanks for the question. I know you're not alone about or sharing the worry about your drugs being too expensive. It is such a problem all over the country. And I will tell you, this isn't happening in a vacuum. This is happening because there are people in our economy and companies in our economy who are making life and making drugs more expensive. I want to talk about pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, you might hear them called. These are corporate middlemen. They are too often involved in ripping off pharmacists and thus ripping off patients. You know, I launched this Monopoly Busters caucus with a bunch of colleagues, and I was proud to be joined by a father-son ownership duo who run an independent pharmacy, Town Drugs in Aspwall. Maybe some folks know it. They talked about how businesses like theirs, this is a small business, independent local pharmacy, how PBMs are frequently steering customers toward their own chain pharmacies how they charge pharmacies these ridiculous fees for things like paperwork errors. They make pharmacies have to agree to pretty brutal terms that lead to higher prices for customers. And we have seen the cost of this. Drugs prices are too expensive. We are losing pharmacies. I guess, and I've got some data here, 80 local pharmacies closed in Pennsylvania last year. So we're seeing customer service get worse for people. We're seeing small businesses go out of business. And we're seeing drug costs go up. I think that's outrageous. It is corporate power run amok. And again, these big PBMs, they're often, the term is vertically integrated. What do I mean when I say that? They're a PBM, they're a corporate middleman who's involved in the pharmacy piece I talked about. They might also operate their own pharmacy, say a mail order pharmacy. They might be an insurance company, and they might even have doctors' practices. All of that power they can use to steer business their way, to push others out, to take away competition, and drive up costs for folks. That's not too American to me. American capitalism needs competition, and we need aggressive action to protect and instill more competition in our economy so that more pharmacists can compete so we can drive down costs. I'm on bills and I support bills around reining in these PBMs. I want to see aggressive antitrust, anti-monopoly enforcement against these corporate giants who are really hurting our neighborhood pharmacies, who are really hurting patients. And I also want to protect, and I talked about it at the beginning, parts of this law, the Inflation Reduction Act, that capped prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare. And it gave Medicare finally the power to negotiate some drug prices. And by the way, that power that was never given to Medicare is about not just bringing down drug costs, it's also about cutting our deficit. So it is about fiscal responsibility. And we know when VA gets to negotiate drug prices and Medicare doesn't, VA ends up paying less for drugs. It is a choice that I do not accept to block Medicare from negotiating. We got to make sure that the Republicans, who I know want to do this, are not able to repeal those important provisions.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone, if you'd like to submit a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6. Our next question is from Tanya from Solicki. So I'm not pronouncing that right. Sewickley. Tanya says, there are too many cancerous dyes and hormones in our kids' foods. Do you support RFK Jr. and what he's doing to make America healthy again?
Tanya from Sewickley, you got it there toward the end. Thanks for the question. Look, I have big concerns with RFK Jr., who's the Secretary of Health and Human Services, on his, I think, pretty dangerous anti-vaccine positions. I mean, look, Western Pennsylvania, we cured polio, for crying out loud. There's a measles outbreak. Places like Texas, kids are at real risk. I have real problems with some of his dangerous positions, and I care a lot about public health. That's also why I am concerned about what's in our food system. Like, I've got kids. We absolutely pay attention to what goes into their food and our food. And yeah, there are real concerns that folks like me share around dyes and additives and all the rest. And we see so many of these are big, powerful companies and lobbies that care more about their profits and the health and safety of our kids and our food. I think it's unacceptable. We need independent research, not just research funded by those same companies. And look, this is something I care about. I'll find allies wherever I can, in whatever party I can, if it means we're going to protect our health, our safety, and protect our kids. I don't think this has to be a partisan thing. If we can find ways to make our food safer, our food supply chain safer, to work with farmers to help them grow in a way that's better for their animals and our lands and our water, let's do it. That does not need to be a partisan thing, and I'll find allies wherever I can to do that.
Thank you. Our next question is from Gary. He's in Penn Hills. Gary says, I heard a lot about the Social Security Fairness Act that helps people get more benefits. Does that include me?
Well, Gary, tough to know. So I would say, number one, let's talk to my office. My team will find out if it's something that might help you. I mentioned this briefly, but the Social Security Fairness Act, recently we just passed it in the Congress. And I was proud to be an original co-sponsor and supporter to help get it done. It got rid of penalties for public servants. I'm talking teachers, cops, firefighters, you name it, who may receive a pension. And the way the law was set up before was that then was cutting into and reducing Social Security benefits that they earned, they paid into. I think that didn't make sense. That was unfair. And so in passing the Social Security Fairness Act, if you're one of those public servants, and again, talk to my office, we'll find out how this might affect you, it fixed that problem and made it sure that you're no longer seeing your Social Security benefits reduced because you might have earned a public sector pension because you're a cop, for instance, or a firefighter. So let's talk to my office, see what we can find out for you, Gary, and get you an answer.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Mavis. Mavis says, can you share how the SAVE Act is going to impact voting rights? How can we stop it from being passed?
Mavis, thanks for the question. And for folks who don't know, the SAVE Act was a bill that passed out of the House a few weeks back. I voted against it, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And my understanding now is the Senate might take this up. I don't know what form, if any, they'll pass it, whether it would come back to the House or whether they might pass and send it to the President. I don't know. But I have concerns, and that's why I voted no. Let me tell you why. So I think this was a bill that my Republican counterparts pushed that could really put at risk the voting rights of a lot of people, especially married women. Here's why. So this bill says you got to have very specific documents even to be registered to vote. Even if you've already been registered and done all the things you had to do to fill out the forms correctly and show whatever you needed to show. And one of the things that it would require you to do is to make your voter registration match a document like your birth certificate. Well, if you've gotten married and you've changed your name today is not going to match your birth certificate, even if you might have it. So if you're an older woman who changed your name, you're much less likely to have, say, that birth certificate or marriage certificate that might show who the heck you are now with a different name. We also know that one of the documents they say would work, a passport. A lot of Americans, half or more, don't even have a passport. It's really expensive and sometimes difficult to get. You got to get to a post office. You got to spend a lot of money. You got to wait. A military ID would not work under this law to get you registered to vote. And I say this as a guy who worked on election security, who spent a lot of my life before I was in Congress working to protect our democracy and protect voting rights, that if my counterparts who pushed this bill were serious about voting rights, they would have taken my amendment. I offered up an amendment that would have gotten an ID, a free one, issued to every eligible citizen in the country that they could have used for voting for election security. They wouldn't even give us a vote on that amendment. It tells you this was not a serious effort to shore up our election system, and instead this is just some cockamamie plan that might hurt a lot of Americans, eligible American citizens, from voting. And that's why I voted against it.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Michelle. She's in Forest Hills. Michelle says, why aren't you doing more to defend Medicare and Medicaid?
Well, I'm doing a lot and everything I can to defend Medicare and Medicaid. And for folks who don't know what's going on about why I'm worried and why I've talked a lot about efforts to cut Medicaid, the House Republicans and their Senate counterparts are pushing a budget proposal or blueprint that calls for north of $800 billion in cuts that is targeted at Medicaid. And again, in our district, more than 120,000 people get their health care through Medicaid. Tens of thousands of kids. And remember, the part of the government that the Republican budget blueprint looks to cut, we're talking the part of the government that handles Medicaid. CHIP, which is the program that you may be familiar with if you got kids, get their insurance. It is a key part. Again, this is the part that's being targeted with this $880 billion of cuts. And they're doing this to fund tax giveaways to the richest and most powerful corporations and people and billionaires of all time. They're going to saddle all of us with trillions of debt. It's deficit spending to do this, and again, on the backs of health care. So I've been doing everything I can, rallying with folks. We had a day of action, sharing and lifting up stories from constituents who are going to be affected here, voting against these ridiculous, fiscally reckless attacks on health care. Just today, I was in the Armed Services Committee, where each committee has their piece of this budget proposal that it ties into the bigger ones the Republicans are pushing that include these targeted cuts, voting against the Armed Services Committee's piece of this, because I think this broader budget is fiscally reckless and dangerous. It can really hurt a lot of people who rely on programs like Medicaid and Medicare for health care. And for Medicare, as folks know, there is a lot of rhetoric, that Medicare is not being targeted. But we know, when I talked about those efforts to cut the Inflation Reduction Act or repeal it, there are key provisions there that allow Medicare to finally negotiate drug prices, that have caps on out-of-pocket expenses for seniors in Medicare. In our district alone, it's around 150,000 or so people who are eligible for Medicare. I think we should be expanding it and strengthening it, putting more services that Medicare would cover, getting more power to negotiate down drug prices. So we got to be doing everything we can to push back on all of these attacks on something like Medicare that is such an earned benefit. I'm on a bill that would expand access to dental, hearing, and vision care for seniors on Medicare. That seems like a no-brainer. We know that is care people need. I'm on a bill that would expand seniors' ability to get multi-cancer early detection technology, to make sure that chiropractic care is covered, and so much else. I think people ought to have health care in this country, and Medicare is such an important lifeline for so many folks.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to remind everyone, if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6 now. Our next question is from Ross Township, and it comes from Cindy. Cindy says, making sure my daughter doesn't have to play sports against a biological male is health care. What are you doing to keep our kids safe from these transgender people?
Cindy, I got to tell you, my kids play sports. I want everyone to be safe. Sports are a big part of our culture and way of life in Western Pennsylvania, and it is a big part of the school experience for kids. I don't think what you need our federal government to do is to target youth sports leagues with draconian laws telling communities what kids get to play. Opening up, and I'll be blunt, a law that I saw, or a bill that I saw in the Congress, would have opened up genital inspections for youth sports. I'm not going to support something like that. I wasn't sent to Congress or to Washington, I don't think, to go and involve the federal government in taking over local sports leagues and telling communities how to make decisions about what kids get to play in what sports. I'm certainly not going to use the sacred trust I have in this job to target pretty vulnerable population, trans kids, who are a pretty small group of ones who are really under attack in a lot of what we've seen in this administration, especially young people. And I don't think, once again, that our federal government needs to decide and make the same standard and the same kind of decision for my kids' 3-year-old soccer league as they might for the NCAA. I think communities can figure this out. I don't think you need a heavy-handed and draconian, aggressive federal approach that would open up genital inspections in youth sports leagues. I don't support that.
Thanks, Congressman. Our next question is from Tom from Beaver. Tom says, thank God President Trump came in and closed the border to stop fentanyl pouring into our country. This is a healthcare issue. Why don't you support him doing this?
Well, I'm not sure what part of this you're really asking me, but I will tell you that fentanyl in particular is a problem around both of our borders, and not just our borders, but what comes in through the mail. And the president, while he's waging a pretty reckless trade war, has refused to take the full action he needs, that he could take, that I've urged this administration and the last to take, to really stop the flow of fentanyl into our country. I'll be clear about what I mean by that. There is an informal entry loophole. That's a term that means something in trade. It's how foreign exporters, especially from China, get around inspection requirements by shipping direct to American consumers. And that is how so many fentanyl and fentanyl precursors and laced products are still getting in. They may face a small tariff now, okay, good, but without this full closure of this loophole, this is still a way for fentanyl to come into our country that I don't know why this president or any other wouldn't take action to close. It is a basic step that I think we should be taking in this country to protect our communities and so many like ours across the country. That is about public health. That is about telling people and criminals across the globe that don't follow our trade rules and don't follow our inspection rules, they have to follow those rules. And once again, I really aggressively push for the closure of this loophole, and it could really save lives in our community.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Right now, I'd like to give the results of the second poll. We asked you, do you or does someone in your household count on Medicare or Medicaid for your health care? 76% of you said yes. 24% said no. Again, 76% said yes and 24% said no. And with that, we are coming to the end of Congressman Deluzio's Social Security and Healthcare Telephone Town Hall. I'd like to thank everyone for participating and joining this important event. If you have a question that wasn't answered, or if you need assistance from a federal agency, please go to the contact page on his website at deluzio.house.gov. You can also call the Congressman's office at 412-344-5583. Again, that's 412-344-5583. You can continue to stay in touch with Congressman Deluzio through social media at Rep. Deluzio or by subscribing to his e-newsletter. You can also sign up on his website. Now I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Deluzio for some closing remarks and anything else he'd like to add. Congressman?
Yeah, thanks everybody. I haven't quite lost my voice yet, but appreciate you being on the line with me tonight. I'm still down in Washington for votes this week, but hope to come home soon. Looks like we had north of 17,000 folks on. That's awesome. It's great to have you guys on with me. And we may not agree on everything, but I bet most of us agree on a lot about what makes our place in the world, Western Pennsylvania, so special. I talk about our values of hard work and patriotism and sacrifice a lot. We know that we keep promises around here. I know we all care deeply as Americans about our freedom, and I think we can't be fully free if we're begging for scraps after a lifetime of hard work. That's not the American dream to me. As we wrap up, I'll remind folks, and I want you to know if you don't know already, I've got my next town hall in person at home, Saturday, May 17th, so please mark your calendar. We'll get out more details soon. I want to highlight a few services from the office. First, if you want to stay in the loop, please sign up for my e-newsletter. You can do that on my website. My office also hosts paid internships at home in the district and down in Washington. And it looks like we're full up for the summer, but we're taking applications for the fall. So interested in candidates, you can see the application on my website. I've also got a page on my website where you can share your experience with what the administration is doing. Tell us those stories, good or bad. Let me know what you think is happening, what you're seeing the administration doing, how it's affecting you. I hope you'll check that out and share your stories with me and help me tell more about what is happening to us in Western Pennsylvania. And finally, and as always, please let us know. If my team or I can help with any issue you're having with a federal agency, setting you up with a tour if you come to visit Washington, or requesting a flag flown in honor of a loved one, any of that. My job is to fight for all of us, the people of Western Pennsylvania. My office is here to serve all of you. There's a lot of work to get done. I know it, and there are big challenges and fights ahead. And I know I probably wasn't able to answer everyone's questions tonight, but I hope we'll keep talking and keep the conversation going. And again, please mark the calendar for my next town hall at home, Saturday, May 17th. You're always welcome to call my office in the district, 412-344-5583, or in Washington, 202-225-2301. Check out the website. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Hope to see you soon. Good night.